They did it, ladies and gentlemen. Canada, they did it. The men's national team is off to the knockout stages of the Copa America after an incredibly stressful and highly dramatic, occasionally entertaining match against Chile that saw Canada play up a man once again for quite some time. This is the post-match Q&A presented by Degree. The red leather jacket only comes out for special occasions.
Yes.
Today absolutely
Come on.
qualifies as a special occasion. Christian Jack is not wearing a red leather jacket famously because I'd be worried about dehydration or heat stroke if he was, because it looks atrociously humid in Orlando, KJ, but I have a feeling that no Canadian will mind. Walk us through your experience, the occasion at Inter and Co Stadium.
Yeah, it's pretty chaotic here as we speak. We've had about at least 30 Chilean fans running on the field, getting tackled by security, and it's still trying to get on the pitch at the moment. The Chilean media was surrounding me. I was literally the only Canadian here. They were ready to explode. At one point, I wondered whether they were fans or media. I'll just say that. And then they all packed up in a huff about 1 minute before the full-time whistle to head down to the press conference to just grill Goalkeeper and co in the mix zone. They're not happy at all, the Chileans. I think I start by saying that because this is a team I don't think have not qualified out of a group stage of a Copa America for 20 years. Canada just did that to them. So, first of all, let's put that in perspective right away. Peru would make the last four and the last 5. Canada did that to them as well. So, there's going to be a lot of discussions over the next 72 to 96 hours about how Canada played, how they did it, can they score enough goals, can the conversion. But right now, the feeling for me is that they got it done. They got it done in a pivotal knockout match when they haven't got it done in the Nations League in Vegas, and they didn't get it done in the World Cup, and they didn't get it done in the Gold Cup in 21. They got it done. And ultimately that's all that counts. And there's a lot of praise that we can splash around the team tonight. I thought they were very, very good in key areas of the match.
We will try to get to some questions in the chat if you have them, whether you are a Chilean supporter that just needs to vent. This is a safe space. You're welcome to do so. Or if you have questions for the panel, please drop them in. We'll get to them as much as we can. Oliver Platt, let's go to you for the next word. KJ sums it up quite well and paints the picture of the story in Orlando. No one's pretending that this was a dominant performance or that these have been dominant performances from Canada, but they got what they needed to get through. They did their job, and it is Chile, it is Peru that get grouped in Group A. Your thoughts on the match and the magnitude of this game for Canada?
It's massive. They're through to the Copa America knockout stage. They will have a chance of winning that quarterfinal. It's probably going to be Venezuela. It's not going to be one of the real giants of this region. So that's huge. I will say I thought they were pretty good tonight, to be honest with you. They beat Peru, and I think they were a lot worse in that game than they were in this one. And I didn't really feel particularly nervous until right at the end there. I wish they'd got themselves a goal to make it more comfortable, obviously. And you put yourself in a situation late where a set piece or a mistake or something can knock you out of the tournament. So it does become, nerve-wracking at that moment. But for the most part, I thought Canada was in control of this game. I just thought they looked like the better side even before the red cards. They did get the advantage of playing a long time against 10 men. But there was clearly, athletically, a massive difference between these two teams. And there were moments where Chile just could not deal with the pace and directness of Canada. So I thought it was a big step forwards, obviously, not just in terms of the result and the outcome and progressing to the knockout stage, but I thought they played a lot better than they did against Peru and will feel a lot more confident and comfortable in that performance going into the knockout stage than if they turned in a repeat of Peru, where you're saying, that could have been a lot different if not for the red card.
Alex, I know you generally like to watch these matches once, twice, or thrice to get a full picture of what you just saw, and I'm sure it'll be a much more enjoyable watch the second time around knowing the results. Over to you for your thoughts. Same question, the draw, the qualification, and what this means for this group that's continuing to establish themselves on the world stage.
Yeah, I think there are overall a lot of good things, I think, in terms of just the management of the game, right? The key moments, kind of like KJ and Ollie mentioned. In these sorts of games, you have to be super, in your own box. You have to be very careful. And I thought Canada, they really didn't let Chile get much in their own box. And I think overall what's really stood out is just the mentality of this team, right? Like you can go back to say Qatar and how they fared there. They played well, and they were well by a lot of key metrics, but ultimately you don't end up getting a win. You go home. I think we've seen a more graduated, like if that version of Canada was maybe the high school, or this was the university version where they've graduated, earned their stripes. They've shown a different mentality in just terms of how they handled the game. So I think what's really important to remember is they could have very well been drawn into the extras, the fouls, the chippiness. And for them, it was just like, all right, like go through it, head up onto the next moment. And I think in between those stoppages, they were showing some good things on the ball, getting into more dangerous areas. I think really if you're Jesse Marsch heading into the next round, all you're looking at is, okay, that defense was pretty rock solid. 2 goals in 3 games. It came from 2 moments of Messi magic against Argentina. Build off that. It's now, okay, how do you get those goals flowing? Because that does still feel like the next step that was just missing, that final action, that final product in this game.
KJ, we'll get back to you. I know you got to get downstairs, and while it is loud in Orlando, you sound great over there. A couple of questions for you before we let you go talk to some people. Let's talk about the fact that Canada once again plays with an extra man, and the offense a bit of a struggle. There's no two ways about it. They get the 1 goal in the last match through Jonathan David. They had their opportunities. Tajon Buchanan, that sequence towards the end. But as we look ahead to the knockout stage for Canada, is there any concern about the offense or the goal scoring, or do you think it's as simple as they knew what they had to do today and they did it?
Yeah, first of all, I'm hearing that Chile will go first in the press conference, so that should be an interesting watch. So you maybe get me a little bit longer if you want me. I can probably be on for another 10 minutes, so hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit better. But so Chile go first in the press conference, and trust me, by the people who are sitting around me, that will not be good for them. But no, I think look, clearly, I was writing down a number of notes during the game, and there was a number of different combinations where you could have said Davies to Larin, Larea to Larin. There was a number of them, right? Even at the end, Buchanan came on, and Miller had chances to put them in the box. And I think if they were able to just slow it down a little bit and be a bit more composed and have the ball a little bit longer in that build-up play, then I think they will be able to finish it. That was very borderline, by the way, the offside. I'm sure you guys have seen the replay on television. I haven't, but I just watched it on my phone back, and it was really close. So I think, to answer your question, it's a good thing if we're sitting here talking about the challenges facing Canada are how are they going to convert in the final third? Because I think most people would have imagined if we'd be sitting here dissecting Canada's challenges in the Copa America so far, it would have been, what about that defense? Ooh, can Jesse Marsch play 2 men in midfield? There's a lot of other areas that people would have gone for before talking about the front line, right? So look, they've got 1 goal in 3 games. Chile's got none. It says everything about that. I don't think Peru. I'm not sure what Peru finished, but I don't think they got many either. So ultimately, I think that they'll believe that they can create the chances. But tonight, as these lads mentioned, and I talked about it yesterday in my hit, and I mentioned it to Jesse Marsch and Astacchio in the press conference. For me, it was the game management and the maturity and not getting suckered in and not playing victim and just being overall just more mature as a unit. And there's lots of areas. By the way, Bombito got a yellow card inside 7 minutes. It should never have been a yellow card. The referee changed his mind. And so what does Larea do? Larea then feels the contact 5 minutes later, and then he's obliged to give that yellow, which subsequently leads to the second yellow later and gets sent off. So again, that's game management. If Canada don't recognize what the referee's doing and Larea doesn't play to the referee, that's the kind of thing that's been happening against Canada for years. And now Canada's doing it to other teams. So, that shows a lot of maturity from me in a different way that, it isn't about X's and O's and systems tonight.
KJ, back to you for a question on Jacob Shaffelburg. It was a point of debate on whether he should start, whether Jesse Marsch should continue to deploy him as a finisher in these types of matches. Jacob does get the start. It goes slightly over an hour. And then when Tajon Buchanan comes in, he seems to bring a similar impact to the match that Shaffelburg has been doing in that role for the last little while. Let's get a thought on you from Jacob in a longer shift out there tonight, and the idea of these young, quick, technically skilled players coming in and the headaches of providing tired defenses at the stages of the match that they're asked to play in.
Yeah, I mean, Maurizio Winslow's 36 years old, right? So he's, he doesn't want Shaffelburg winning him as many times as he did. Look, Shaffelburg proved he belongs. He belongs, guys. Like, ultimately, this was a stage where he wasn't overawed, and I'm really pleased for him because it's a very different skill set to come and start a game. It's very different than what he did in the 2 games previously. And I thought he did really well defensively as well, covering the space that he needed to do and adapting to it. He's also getting more and more mature and finding his voice too. He wanted that penalty, and he was still talking about it underneath me here when he got taken off. And he went straight to the 4th official and was asking questions marks as well about it. Ollie, I'll throw it to you quickly. You've been big on this. You wanted him to start from this, and he proved that he deserved it, didn't he?
Yeah, I think you have to give Jesse Marsh some credit tonight, because one of the maybe complaints about Canada at times over the years has been that they tend to stick with the same players rather than picking players who are more in form. And I think there's arguments for both sides of that. But he went with Shaffelburg tonight. He went with Richie Laryea over Tejan Buchanan. Like, he left an Inter Milan player and a Marseille player on the bench to play 3 MLS players in midfield. And I think he did it because he felt those guys were in form and performing, and he got rewarded. Like, Laryea gave Suazo like a 27-minute nightmare, an absolute horror show before he got sent off. Shaffelburg, I think, did well. It wasn't as spectacular as when he's come off the bench, but I think he performed well. So, those decisions, I think, paid off. I'll just add that I thought the penalty was a decent shout for Shaffelburg. I'll have to see it back again to really know. But there was an attack a few minutes later where Canada were breaking at speed. Shaffelburg was running into the box, and he got absolutely cleaned out by a Chilean defender. I'm not sure who it was, but it went completely unnoticed. I think it was potentially a red cards type of challenge. But he picked himself up and carried on. So, yeah, I thought he had a good night.
Let's talk about the maturity from Canada that was displayed on multiple occasions as we continue. Alex, let's go to you. You're more than welcome to chime in on the Shaffelburg conversation, but if I could, I'd like to also get to show some love to the defenders and how Alistair Johnston up there for man of the match, how consistently it felt like whether it was goal kicks or long diagonal balls, they were targeting him, especially on a yellow, and he seemed to keep his head and not let some of the antsiness of a match of this magnitude and then the stress come into play there, and top to bottom, they hold another clean sheet in that regard. So I guess ultimately this is an open question for you, whichever side of the pitch you'd like to talk about.
Yeah, well, I'll get to the defense. I think because, KJ and Ollie talked mostly about what I'd say about Shaffelburg. The last point I'd add and what I've liked when he's come on, and I like that he brought this, because sometimes it could be harder to do from the start. He really, he goes at guys. And in French, sometimes they say, like, he percute, he's provoking, right? Like, he gets the ball and he wants to make things happen. And I like that sort of quality in a winger, right? Because sometimes it could be easy where you see a fullback in front of you, want to play it simply, you want to go back, you want to retain possession, you don't want to mess up a dribble or mess up an opportunity. I just like how Shaffelburg, it's always head down, go to the line, do what you can. If you mess it up, all right, just work your tail off to get back and make up for the mistake. So I thought that was something that was nice to see from the start, because one thing about Tejan Buchanan that we've seen from the start is he's been a bit more timid than we're used to seeing, because he usually has that quality. But on the flip side, him coming off the bench today, he showed it. So maybe this is the confidence booster he needed, similar to Shaffelburg. But I think Johnston is a great person to highlight, because he honestly might have been my player of the match today. I thought he was just absolutely in the thick of the fight. He was getting targeted all game long in terms of the wingers going at him. They were trying to get in his head. And you can tell that mentality that he's developed playing, of course, a lot in CONCACAF, but also at Celtic, where it's a lot of tough, rough and tumble games. But then he brought a little quality. He played some of Canada's nicest passes, nicest through balls. There was that one to Laryea. I think it was sometime in the second half that nearly led to a great chance. And that's what I think that's Johnston at its best. He brings you this quality. He brings you an extra body possession that can help you overload and create in wide areas. But also he brings a bit of that CONCACAF. He brings a bit of that fight. And, players who can do both in a game, in a tournament like this, are incredibly, incredibly valuable. And I think that was the overall mentality of this whole back line, from Bombito to Cornelius to Davies.
Sounds like there's a construction site behind you, but please weigh in.
Chilean journalists smashing their laptop or something behind you.
I'll just add, kind of in jest, but kind of to make a point. Alistair Johnston helped send that Eden Hazard to retirement, and I think he might have done the same for Alexis Sanchez tonight.
Fair enough. Ollie, on Ali and his performance.
Yeah, really good. Not much to add to what Alex said, to be honest with you. I thought Cornelius had another really good game as well. I think distribution is maybe where the centre backs have a bit of improvement to do, but defensively, can't really fault much that we saw tonight. I do think bigger tests are to come. You look at, again, the difference at times in dynamism between the Canada attack and the Chile attack, I thought was pretty stark tonight, but they didn't beat, but they got the result and the clean sheet that was needed against what was in front of them. And yeah, that back line is, like KJ mentioned earlier, I think the conversation and the debate is completely flipped from us wondering about the defense and what that's going to look like to asking whether they're going to score enough goals.
Christian, we'll let you head downstairs after this question, and I know you'll have time to speak to players and absorb what just happened, but you've been with this team a lot for their big matches the past few years, and it just seems like this is another huge step in the right direction for them. Not quite going to ask you for your group stage essay, but your parting words before we let you go tonight.
Yeah, I'll obviously go speak to the coach and the player, and I'll do my hit later. But I think for me, it's just seeing Canada finally do it and get over the line. And as I said, it's not a night tonight to talk about the build-up play or the lack of finishing. It's a night to celebrate with the fireworks behind me that Canada have made a Copa America quarterfinals in a group of 3 South American teams. I'll just let it be said that, and I think that's for all of us to enjoy. And I hope this country gets behind them and continues to do it, because I think the more big games we have, and the more we have opportunities for Canadians to be on national television and talk about it across One Soccer, the better. So anybody who's passionate that we all are about this game, we want to have more of these matches, and it's just great that Canada gets at least one more.
Christian, cheers. Thank you so much. We look forward to that hit when you have, let's say, 5 or 6 minutes to get that shot, but enjoy the conversations downstairs. Thank you as always. Christian Jack joining us live from Inter and Co Stadium in Orlando. We'll stay with Oliver Platt and Alex Gonge-Ruzik. A reminder, to throw some questions if you have any, or just some themes you'd like discussed. We'll try and cover this with a broad stroke, but if there's anything in particular, please throw them in the chat. Do either of you know the answer to, do yellow cards get reset for the quarterfinals? I didn't think they did. I thought that was a semi, but I can check that unless either of you know the answer right now, top of your head.
Thought it was after the quarterfinals, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. So into the semis, that's when it would get reset. We'll look to get some confirmation. SS Vinny asks, who will Canada play next? They still have to finish the 3rd matches in Group B, but at the moment it is looking like Venezuela for Canada on Friday in Arlington, Texas. Alex, the next question that we will throw to you, when we start to think about that quarterfinal, and we don't want to rush ahead because we want to savor some of this moment as well, but whoever comes out of that group, as much as we know what we think it's going to be, what is that quarterfinal going to feel like in Arlington, and what type of test will Canada be in for?
Yeah, it's going to be an incredibly intense game. That was the one thing that probably stood out the most to this game, just sitting back, like volume on, watching it. Like, you could feel the intensity, every tackle, every touch, every time Chile would push forward. I immediately felt like you're watching a knockout game at a major tournament. Of course, the stakes were a knockout game. Whoever wins pretty much ends up going through. Was what was at stake. So I'm very curious to see that raise in intensity. That alone, it's going to be very tough, especially if it's Venezuela. From what I've seen, a very intense team. They're going to want to bring a similar mentality. If it ends up being Ecuador, certainly similar mentality, a bit more final product, a bit more quality. But I think the intensity is going to be the big thing to look for in the quarterfinal. And I think this was a great test for Canada, because again, I think it's something we're heading into this group. There was a lot of, that was the tough debate we had of, all right, how realistic was it to suggest Canada could get out this group? Because on paper, it's pretty much a slam dunk, right? You look in terms of the quality, you look in terms of the market values, where players are playing. You lose all those metrics. We've exhausted those at length. But what we said was, okay, how could they handle the experience of a Chile, the experience of a Peru, of course, the experience and everything Argentina brings. I think the fact that they've gone into those 3 tough environments, they've held their own each time, they got the results they needed. I think this was a good test for that, but I expect another level. The fans will bring it, and certainly the players itself. That you can tell, that's the big thing that really stood out this tournament. Just like every game I watched, it feels like the players are dying out there for their shirts, and I'd expect nothing less than the quarterfinal if that's what the group stage is like.
Quick jump in from me here. Found it in the regulations article 143. We were kind of right, Ollie. So the accumulation of yellow cards from the group stage becomes null and void from the start of the knockout stage, quarterfinals onwards, unless a player received their second today. They would serve that suspension for the first round of the knockouts,
okay.
which is the quarterfinal. So that is the clarification for the question from the chat. To you for the same question that I asked Alex about how Canada will need to raise their play, raise their intensity to match, because getting out of the group stage is a monumental accomplishment, and there's nothing to diminish what they've done, but knockout football just hits different, and it requires different things out of the group. What are you expecting from likely a Venezuela or an Ecuador?
Well, I think you have to expect that they're going to have to play 11v11 for once, which they haven't had to do for the conclusion, at least, of the past two games. So that, I think, will be the start of the challenge. But I just hope that this result and getting through the group gives Canada a bit more kind of conviction in their own ability here, because I think there's been a lot of talk about how experienced these teams are and how savvy they are. And you play against a team like Chile tonight, who's won 2 Copa Americas not too long ago. And that is a factor, and that is something where Canada maybe doesn't have that level of experience, but it's not the only factor. And there are also other things at play here that are much more in Canada's favor. The youth, the dynamism of this team, the quality in this team, the experience they've got at the top levels. Like, it's a lot more than some of the teams they're facing right now. And I think you're starting to see that grow and more glimpses of it. But it's almost like the players themselves still need to have that little bit of extra conviction that they are good enough, that they are actually better than some of these teams, and that they can impose themselves on them. I just remember before the World Cup, when we came back from the warm-up friendlies in Europe, I talked to a member of the coaching staff at that time, and his kind of assessment of the team was he felt that the team at that time, and that's obviously going back 18 months now, could go toe-to-toe with anyone. It was just, are they going to be ruthless enough? Are they going to be killers when they're on top in games and have the advantage in order to get results at the highest level? And I think that's still a bit of a lingering concern with this team, and we saw it tonight, is that they just don't always turn chances, turn control, turn dangerous moments into finishing, and don't always find ways to get the results that I think they could do at times. But on a performance level, I think they're good enough, certainly to go up against Venezuela and give them a real good game. So I'm hoping that belief is starting to build within the group, to not just deliver performances, but results.
Something that goes such a long way. I think you talk to any goalkeeper about it, or anyone who's played at the professional level, is the idea of the confidence and calm that an informed keeper who's making saves that perhaps they don't always necessarily shouldn't always necessarily make, but when you get that moment of magic or two from your goalkeeper, how it can transcend the outfield players in front of them. And especially late in the match, the final moments of stoppage time, Maxime Crépeau reaches out, seems to grab the ball by the end of his fingertips and reel it in and make the catch. He's involved again in a second consecutive clean sheet for this country, Ollie. I mean, we've sung the man's praises a ton. We've asked the question on the slower days about whether he's ready for a move to Europe, but it's a bit of a different situation for him here, where he's not as involved today, Crépeau. He's not as busy today with the numerical advantage that Canada has. And yet when he was tested, and there were a few big tests towards the end of the match, he was there to answer the call again. Some thoughts on Crépeau as he's gone a draw, a loss, and then conceding 2 to Argentina. So a pretty remarkable 3 matches for him.
Yeah, it sometimes presents, a different kind of challenge, right? For a goalkeeper, when you are busy, it kind of gets you into a rhythm. And I think some goalkeepers prefer to have that kind of action and to be making saves and to feel they're in the game. Crépeau was always going to have to, I think, wait for that last 10 or 15 minutes where he was going to be called upon in one way or another, whether it was making a save or coming out and claiming a cross, being commanding when his team needed him to. And he did that tonight. So I don't think you can really have a knock against Maxime Crépeau at this tournament so far. And if Canada can, potentially go one game further in this tournament, I think he'll be in the conversation for the best goalkeeper at the Copa America. He's been pretty much spotless so far.
Alex, you agree?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair statement. And I think what I've really liked about Crépeau is it's even beyond the shot stopping, right? Sometimes saves can be a bit arbitrary sometimes. If a striker puts it 2 inches to the left, you just can't reach it, et cetera, et cetera. What I like about Crepo is how he controls what he can control. And I think there was really one moment that stood out. I think it was about minute 85, something like that. Ball over the top, dangerous ball. Crepo's right there, comes flying out. I think he even took a touch and then booted it up. And it was just so composed, so well taken. And I thought a moment like that, yeah, it's unlikely that in most cases that it ends up as anything. Maybe the defender gets there first, or the goalkeeper comes out and heads it. But just how composed, how calm, I immediately thought like, okay, that's some good bit of goalkeeping. I think it was highlighted on the broadcast as well, and that's what you get with Crepo. It's this fearlessness, and a confidence in his own ability. When he knows when he can come out. He knows when he can get a palm on a ball. Like you mentioned at the end, it was a bit of a risk to come out. He could have stayed on his line and let his defenders do the work. He felt, okay, I can go out, get this ball, put a hand on it. And I think you can't discount how it's made all the defenders in front of him play a little bigger, because it helps us so much when a ball goes over your shoulder, maybe like it did a few times against Argentina or in other games, and you're like, all right, at least Max is back there. He'll come flying out. He'll do his thing. He's broken his leg before doing the same thing, yet it doesn't stop him. Like that sort of mentality rubs off on defenders. And I think that's something that can't be forgotten. That, of course, it's the saves. Of course, it's the highlight reel we've seen. But I think those little moments, too, that he does in terms of claiming and just that calmness he brings is really rubbed off on the defenders.
Something I saw in the chat, and Armin, if I may, I'll try and bring it up here from Gordo. Actually, it looks like I don't have the authority for that. Gordo, 10:28 p.m. mentions that in the quarterfinals, no extra time is played. I just wanted to add to that. That's the same for the semis and the third place match as well. The only match in Copa America knockout football that would go through the extra time and then penalties would be the final if it gets there. It's a great point to add, because all of a sudden this is the environment Canada's in, and what happens if the match is level after 90 minutes. Ollie, I'm not going to be the one to stir the pot too much. I know there's some good accounts in our friend like JJDTV who likes to take some shots at Tactical Manager about Canada and the US or Kings of CONCACAF, etc. But we have to talk about what is at stake for CONCACAF now at this stage in the tournament. You look at Group B, Mexico, Jamaica, 3rd and 4th. The US, they fall to Paraguay, way as red card. They're on the verge of getting grouped unless they get a result and some help against Uruguay. What does this say for Canada to almost be the CONCACAF flag bearers at this tournament?
Good question. I don't know what it says. Like, I don't think it's been a great tournament for CONCACAF, to be honest with you. It started okay, and it's gone downhill since. So, look, I think Canada is obviously rising in terms of their relevance and their quality within CONCACAF to be one of the top teams now, and other teams are maybe going in a bit of a different direction. And to be fair, I didn't think that about the United States. It was more Mexico that I think was trending in the wrong way. But you get it can swing at times on one red card, as we've seen for both Canada and the United States. You benefit on the one hand, you pay the price for a moment of stupidity on the other hand, and it's a short tournament. It can swing very quickly.
Well, there was that delightful tweet from CONCACAF early in the night that said one last challenge for Canada. They're going to have to add an asterisk or have one more last chance for Canada on Friday in Arlington. Alex, we would be remiss to go through the entire program here. And I know we don't have a ton of time, only a few minutes left, but the first half, we have some significant calls. We have some significant bookings decisions and what that went overall from the referee, who I decided to show some love to today. What did you make of the disciplinary decisions or non-decisions and how they impacted the match and how Canada was able to handle some of that adversity?
Yeah, I think, funnily enough, I'd say I'd probably pretty fine with it, just because I liked the early yellow card. Yeah, it was unfortunate for Bombito, because I think he makes that tackle any other game in this tournament, and he's laughing. He probably has a few more in him. But I think from the referee, that did set a bit of an early tone, and like you mentioned, that ends up benefiting Canada, because like, all right, like that's the level set, etc. And I think, the first half, I like the way he managed the decisions. I do think he did lose control of that second half. It felt like things
a little bit towards the
really
end, yeah,
teetering on the edge in that second half, and it kind of felt like he didn't really want to get too involved with everything going on. But I like the tone it set at the start of the game. I think both teams kind of knew there was a clear line, and I think it was a testament to Canada. They were able to adjust to it, whereas Chile, they were kind of almost like thrown off by the fact that, all right, we're getting booked for things that maybe against Peru, for example, where it's just an absolute war on the field, they were getting away with. So I didn't mind that, and I'd like to see more referees do that, just because, again, every game I watch, some of these tackles they let slide early in games, which is, again, it's fine if teams want to come out and set the tone, but there has to be yellows, there has to be reds. If not, the game can just escalate into chaos. And I think the fact that referee gave out those early yellows set a tone for a tamer first half, which was a nice change of pace.
15 fouls committed by Canada in the match, 8 committed by the Chileans. Of course, the second yellow sending off, 4 as well for Canada. I think everyone but Cornelius along the back. Ollie, with this conversation that is worth having, but what would you say to the people that might just look at the result and say, well, red card, Canada had an easy path the way through, the red card changed the game, et cetera, et cetera. Canada had to play with the cards that were not just dealt, but brandished. What did you make of the discipline and how Canada took their chance despite it not being maybe as dramatically offensive as they would have liked?
Yeah, I mean, they have had help. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Like, Peru and Chile did to a certain extent beat themselves and are a shadow of what I think we've seen from both teams in the past. I think you can acknowledge that and still say that, particularly tonight, like I said, I didn't think they played great against Peru, and they found a way to get a result, which is, I guess, all that matters in tournament football. But tonight they were much better. And I think you can look at the first 26 or 27 minutes or whatever of that game and see a Canada team that, was performing, I think, pretty well and was very much in that game, if not on top in that game. And yeah, there is something to be said for their ability to keep a lid on it. I think in terms of their own discipline, not do anything stupid, particularly for the players who have received yellow cards. I do think, if we're being honest, Bombito was fortunate with that elbow early on in the game that wasn't spotted. So maybe we got away with one there, but potentially cashing in the headbutt against Peru is a return favor, I guess I'll say on that one.
All right, Alex, the final word to you before we get out of here today.
Yeah, I think for Canada, I think it's important just to understand how big of a 3 games this was for them. I think to head into a tournament like this, to make the most of 3 opportunities to play just 3 games, where they learn so much about themselves. You go up against the best, but then also maybe against Peru and Chile, you just get to see firsthand the experience and the sort of level that it brings in South America. And I think most importantly, you keep the journey. Like I can't stress, win or lose. I think the game's next Friday when they go out, how valuable a game like that is going to be heading into 2026. And I think that's something that can't be forgotten. That at the end of the day, this tournament was about preparing for 2026. And now that when they head into 2026, again, no matter what happens on Friday, you look back like, all right, yes, you went to a tough tournament with 3 South American teams. You got out your group. That's a huge sign of progress. Now you got to taste the knockout game, see the different level, different energy, different intensity that it provided. Your defense went up against some top attackers and held up. I think those are all points of reference. And I think what's crucial too, and you can't forget, Jesse Marsh has still only been with the team for a month. I think it's going to give a good reference point to the players. Like, all right, this was a good first step. Now imagine if you get more to come, you get patterns of play, you get chemistry, you start to understand the manager's style. I think it's been really impressive to see the mentality he's brought in. And yeah, I'm excited to see what they do in this knockout game now, because the mentality, again, I'll continue to stress it just because it's been, even just on like Marsh on the touchline, the way he's handled himself, the way how he looks in press and how he's talked in press conferences, it's really brought a new dimension to this team. And I think that's important, because talent was never an issue. You're never looking at this team and wondering, oh, they're not talented enough to go toe to toe. But it was, all right, how could they take that next step? And I think for the first time since the World Cup, it feels like they've finally put together tangible, ways of showing that, okay, they're actually not that far off from taking that step. And who knows, maybe they take it as soon as this week with a knockout win, or maybe it's in the months and years to come as they get used to their new manager and what's to come out of 2026.
AT&T Stadium on Friday. It will be a 7 p.m. Central Time start, 5 p.m. Pacific. Canada against the winner of Group B, and we will find out who that will be just tomorrow. So much to say about this performance, this qualification for Canada. Second in Group A, quarterfinalists at the 2024 Copa America. Our thanks to Sarbucks, to Christian Jack, to AGR, to Oliver Platt, and to all of you for joining us for our watch party and our post-match reaction show. We will be back tomorrow with another episode of Vamos, presented by Degree in Studio. So make sure you keep it locked to @OneSoccer on social for the best sound and visuals coming from the tournament and the analysis around it. But for tonight, we raise a glass to you, Canada. Enjoy the historic evening, and we look forward to having you back here very soon on OneSoccer.